On today's Padone My Take, I'll be joined by CBS fantasy sports analyst Smitty Smith to get you ready to ace your upcoming fantasy football draft. We're also going to talk some NBA playoffs and the hiatus currently going on tonight with that. Give you my takes about Browns training camp, obviously Grant Delpit going down, big injury there, assess the Earl Thomas situation, and give you all my takes around the world of sports. So let's do it, because Padone My Take is brought to you guys by my new friends at dugoutmugs.com. Dugout Mugs is a super cool story founded by former baseball pitcher Randall Thompson, who was hardly making any money in the minor leagues before the Blue Jays inevitably released him. So he became an assistant baseball coach for his alma mater, Florida Tech, where he spent a lot of time in the dugout. Now, in the dugout, Randall noticed that you can drink out of a baseball barrel and hollow out the inside of a bat and turn it into a mug. Thus, Dugout Mugs was born. Randall wanted to hook it up and get you guys started with your Dugout Mugs today, so he's sending a free knob shot for my listeners. They're going to take the handle of an actual baseball bat, hollow out the inside of it, and you could use it as a little shot glass. It even has the Cleveland Indians logo or any other MLB team that you want it etched on it for free of charge. So I want you guys to visit dugoutmugs.com/Padone for a free shot glass. You just have to pay the shipping and handling. You're going to get a $25 shot glass that's in the stadium at Progressive Field in the team shop for $25. I'm going to get you guys this shot glass for free. You just have to pay like $8 to get it to your house. It's dugoutmugs.com/Padone to take advantage of that. Get your free, dugout mug knob shot glass, and like me, you're going to be in the mug as well. You can't beat it. It's a limited time thing for my listeners. dugoutmugs.com/Padone. That's dugoutmugs.com/my last name, Padone. As you guys can see, my Cleveland Indians dugout mugs arrived today. They look great. I love them. I can't wait to put them to good use right here in the Big Play studio. dugoutmugs.com/Padone for your free knob shot glass, man. How could you pass up on a little guy like this free of charge? That link will be at the bottom of the show today. So last week, I'm sitting in this studio where we're currently at, and I'm pounding my hand on the table that the Browns need to pick up Clay Matthews. The Browns need to pick up Clay Matthews. Mac Wilson goes down. The Browns need a linebacker. Clay Matthews is out there. He's the perfect story. His dad played here, fan favorite, all this, great career thus far. Now I've kind of changed my mind on that. The Browns addressed that situation by getting linebacker Malcolm Smith. Obviously, he's a Super Bowl MVP with the Seattle Seahawks, key piece of their Legion of Boom for all those fun, memorable runs that the Seahawks had for all those years. Now I'm going to start off the show with a little bit of a hot take. Let's scorch off with a hot take and say that I think the Cleveland Browns should probably sign Earl Thomas. And there's been a slew of injuries that make me say this. Obviously, that you don't just sign Earl Thomas to be here and compete with the guys that you already have. So the big one we know is Grant Delpit, who was drafted by the Browns the second round this year, blows out his Achilles at practice. Not good. You have Kevin Johnson, who was already injured last week with the lacerated liver. Mac Wilson already out with the hyperextended knee. Then you have Greedy Williams get injured at practice. You have Chad Thomas get injured at practice. The Cleveland Browns are missing some key players on this defense, and I don't think anybody's really debating that. So what I didn't really appreciate is people hop on Twitter, as they often do, and act like the Grant Delpit injury is the end of the world, which I don't really think is the case. I think the Cleveland Browns could be mighty fine without Grant Delpit this season. You look at the free safeties that they already have on the roster, and strong safeties for that matter, because I will admit Delpit is a versatile guy, so losing him like this hurts. But you look at Andrew Sendejo. When the Browns gave Andrew Sendejo that one-year offer sheet this offseason, it made immediate sense in my mind that, okay, this is the starter week one. It's a guy that Kevin Stefanski is already familiar with, both in the locker room and on the field. It's kind of Andrew Sendejo's spot to lose in training camp. And then you have the guy that played at the end of the season last year, and who, in my opinion, for the small bit that we were able to see him, I liked what I saw out of Sheldrick Redwine. I thought he put out enough good tape for the Browns to say, hey, this Sheldrick Redwine, not only did we use a mid-round pick on him, but when he was able to get out there and perform as a rookie, he looked okay. He looked worth developing. And I think that was kind of the plan heading into the draft was we have Andres Sandejo, who's going to be our starter. Then we have, Sheldrick Redwine, who's going to play rotationally and develop that way instead of being rushed in and thrown to the fire. So people were acting like this Grant Delpit injury was the end of the world. I was seeing tweets that say, are you rechanging your Browns season prediction? The overall record prediction is going to get changed because of Grant Delpit injury. Now, I know that obviously when you look at a player getting injured, especially a rookie, you're looking for his longevity of his career. And like when you blow out your Achilles, he's not going to come back the same. And that's what's scary and that's what's disheartening. But people were acting like immediately this year it's a wash. And it doesn't have to be a wash because you already have a veteran in place. You have a rookie that's worth developing. And you could add on a third guy that's a 3-time All-Pro that just got released from a division rival. To me, it makes a lot of sense. And obviously, people are going to complain that Earl Thomas isn't worth the headache. And there is a lot of headache. He was late for team meetings because he was getting his car washed. That's absolutely ridiculous. And that cannot happen at the National Football League. He got in a fist fight with a teammate, which I think was just the last straw. It's football. It's training camp. These guys are sick of each other. They're sick of playing each other, especially with no preseason games. You have nobody else to hit, nobody else to take your anger out on. Fights are going to happen in training camp, guys. It's part of the sport. That didn't bother me that much. You had the really awkward and off-putting off-season incident involving his brother in the bedroom, and I don't really want to get into all of that because I think if he could come in for a meeting, and this is Adam Schefter, by the way, is reporting that the Browns could very well be in on the possibility of a Earl Thomas signing, and I think if he comes in with a clear head and he's upright and honest with Kevin Stefanski and with Andrew Berry, I don't think it would be a mistake of a signing like we saw in Cleveland Browns past with John Dorsey, when he took all of his flyers on the troublesome players like Antonio Callaway. Hear me out. We're less than 3 weeks away. We're 18 days away as this podcast is being recorded here on, Wednesday, August 26th. Less than 3 weeks away from playing the Baltimore Ravens. We're the reigning champions of this division. Huge game for Kevin Stefanski as his debut as a head coach. Huge game for Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, all the pressure, that offense. Then you look at the defense. You have Myles Garrett just signs that huge extension. It's in the back of his head a little bit is, I got to live up to the hype of this freaking extension now. I was at one time the highest defensive player in this league. I got to play well. The pressure is there. So why not sign Earl Thomas to a cheap, prove it year? He's motivated to play against the Ravens twice a year. He probably feels like they did him dirty. He's a veteran. I'm going to show up to meetings late. I'm a veteran. I've been in this league. I've won a Super Bowl. I'm a 3-time All-Pro. So he probably feels wrong that he was cut, but he probably also understands on the same token that what he did was wrong. And then let me paint you a picture here. After he signs his, 1 or 2 year offer sheet with the Cleveland Browns, has a great meeting with Andrew Berry, has a great meeting with Kevin Stefanski, all the stuff that you like to hear. Then he moseys down to the meeting room, a place that he wasn't too familiar with in Baltimore, from what we're hearing. And he sits down in one of those big, cozy chairs in Berea, and he probably cracks his back a little and kicks up his nice Nike shoes on the desk, puts his hands behind his head, and said, "Joe, let's talk, because we, at the end of the day, have a game here to play in about 2 weeks. And it's a pretty important one. If this team that I just signed for 2 years really wants to make some noise in this division, in this league, if we want to make a serious run at the playoffs this year, it starts week 1. Starts with the reigning champs, my former team, Baltimore Ravens." Tells Joe Woods all the secrets of Greg Roman and his run-happy ways, and Lamar Jackson, who seemingly can take a snap and you blink your eyes and he's 10 yards down the field. You have Earl Thomas, who's a 3-time All-Pro, which doesn't happen by accident, folks. You got to be a good football player to be a 3-time All-Pro. And a veteran mentor for the young guys. So now you have Sandejo, who's going to be a veteran leader. You hope Carl Joseph can be healthy and be a veteran leader. You have Earl Thomas, who's been there. He's played in the playoffs. He's played in the Super Bowls. Not to mention now, you're pairing him with his former teammate, Malcolm Smith, who is a key piece of the Legion of Boom. Malcolm Smith at that linebacker position and Earl Thomas at safety. They've played together. They know each other's tendencies, where they like to be, how they like to get that ball out. Yeah, just imagine Malcolm Smith stripping the ball out from Juju Smith-Schuster, and next thing you know, Earl Thomas is scooping it up. Myles Garrett's leading the way, pointing towards the end zone, and it's a scoop and score. Guys, I think I'm on to something here. I don't think it's that far-fetched that a player that's, mind you, only 30 years old or 31 years old in Earl Thomas can change his ways, and that he can prove to Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, like, hey, I know you guys are young, and hey, I know this is the first year of this thing, and your owners have went out there and said that they're tampering their expectations for this season. But look, I'm a veteran guy that's coming to come in here and teach these young guys how to get right, how to win some football games, and how to make a splash in the National Football League. To me, how don't you sign a guy like that? And that's all I have to say about the Earl Thomas situation. And I feel like that's all that needs to be said, is that he's had his issues in the past, and he's paying the price for them right now heavily. He's without a job. The Dallas Cowboys, who seemed like the surefire match made in heaven for him, said, we want nothing to do with the guy. We have the cap space, but we can't bring in Earl Thomas right now. Not under these circumstances. How about the 49ers? Kyle Shanahan went out there and said, we like Earl Thomas. It's no disrespect to him, but we have our guys right now, and we're not going to mess that up. Mess that up? You're adding a 3-time All-Pro player. I like my chances, and I feel like that's all that needs to be said. He's paying the price right now. And if you bring him in here cheap, bring him in here looking to prove himself, motivated against a division rival that just let him go, mark my words, if it happens, the Cleveland Browns won't regret signing Earl Thomas. That's my take in regards to that. So it's also officially fantasy football season. Yeah, give me a round of applause there. My draft is tomorrow. Just a few weeks ago, however, I went on a gigantic rant complaining that nobody cares about your fantasy football team. Nobody cares about your lineup, your injuries, your draft. Nobody cares about any of it. Nobody wants to see any of it. Nobody wants to help you. Nobody wants to give you advice. Nobody cares. But I found a guy who does. I found a guy who cares about your fantasy league and wants you to ace your upcoming draft, whether you're drafting tomorrow like me, this weekend like some of my friends, or even into next week as the NFL season is still 18 days away. Joining Padone My Take now is a 16-year fantasy sports veteran for CBS Sports. He is the founder of SleeperU.com, as well as the Fantasy Football Show, where you can talk fantasy football with him any time of the season, whether it's off-season, regular season, whatever you want. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, from CBS Sports Radio. It's Smitty Smith. Okay, so joining me now from SleeperU.com, host of the Fantasy Football Show on FantasyFootballShow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Smitty. Smitty, how the heck are you? And thanks for joining the show.
And thanks for having me on. I'm just getting ready for football. I mean, it comes so fast every year. I won't lie. I wish I had more time. Just like I think we all feel about our weeks and days. I just feel like if I had another few months, I could do so much more. But the season's around the corner. Thank God we have a season so far.
Yeah, thank goodness. So you're doing some really cool stuff on SleeperU.com. Even so cool that people could literally pay to give you a call and you walk them through their draft and tell them the best picks to win this league. Talk to people a little bit about how those phone calls go.
Yeah, you can go to heysmitty.com too. That'll take you right to that product and
Sweet.
That feature. But basically at heysmitty.com, you can purchase like an hour phone call where I could do half of it before draft, draft prep. If you want me to be there for the entire first hour of your draft. And then, if you want a 15-minute phone call, you could purchase just one phone call. But, a lot of people, it's funny, people will call and sometimes they'll be like, I don't have too many questions. I just wanted to call in and talk football with you. And I totally get that. Like, that's the mentality I had when I first got into the business 16 years ago, is I couldn't stop talking about fantasy football. I couldn't stop ranking players in April. And this is before Dynasty, mind you. And none of my friends wanted to. They're like, you're crazy, Smitty. The magazines come out in late July. That's what everybody waited for back in, 16 years ago. And I was just like, I know there are more people like me that want to talk fantasy football like all day long, like talk shop. That's what I wanted to do. That was my goal.
Great stuff, man. So let's do that. Let's do what you started up, and let's rank some players. So say you get the first pick in this upcoming draft. Is it that easy? Is Christian McCaffrey that easy? And what are some of the next, players that you're taking a look at? Running backs, receivers, obviously it depends if PPR or not, but let's just assume, it is PPR because I feel like in 2020 now, that's the way a lot of leagues are kind of rolling here.
Yeah, and ironically, it wasn't always the case, but every single running back essentially, but like Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry in that top 12, top 13 overall, top 14 overall are all PPR monsters, you know. It used to be where you had to decide between a PPR monster and a non-PPR monster at 1, 2, 3. Now they all catch a ton of grip of passes. So you really don't have that dilemma you used to have with PPR, non-PPR with the running backs, except for Henry and except for just a couple handful of running backs. At 1.1, I want to say that everybody's going to continue to go McCaffrey, but I think there's a lot more people out there that are they're Barkley shamers, you could call them, and it's so funny because Barkley's almost right there in everybody's mind right now. Still, like, nobody's like discrediting the guy or saying, oh, he's not close to McCaffrey. I have Barkley 1.1.
Okay.
And if I have two different drafts, I might go McCaffrey in one, I might go Barkley in the other to mix it up. I like diversifying my fantasy portfolio because one injury can take down your whole fantasy year, and that blows. But if I'm evaluating the two, I only have one draft, let's say, or somebody says, hey, I'm in one league. Barkley, to me, I feel like people are going to be they're going to have short memories for how much they're vaulting McCaffrey over him, because I think he's in for a 15 TD season in 2020. I think the Giants are going to take a huge step forward. Danny Dimes is going to become a really good quarterback, and I was one that doubted him when they drafted him. So I've already gone on record with an oopsie. I do a nailed it and oopsie episode where I totally missed on Daniel Jones. He looks phenomenal, and somebody's going to have to absorb the explosion that's going to happen in his game. And Slayton's going to be one, Evan Ingram when he's healthy, and Barkley's just going to be a PPR monster beyond monster in 2020 and beyond. And I think that his injury just, for whatever reason, made people think that he is not the 1.1. He's not even considered the 1.1. Everyone's like, you take Barkley at 1.1. They're like, oh my God, over McCaffrey? Like, it's the weirdest reaction. I don't have that reaction when people take McCaffrey over Barkley, but when you take Barkley over McCaffrey, people act like you're just going rogue.
Right.
And I don't get it. The guy is 15 TD capable. And I know McCaffrey is too, but changing offense, I know that you could say the same thing about some changes in New York, but I don't know that I trust the meshing between a new quarterback, that coaching, the overworked workload they continue to feed McCaffrey. Not that I'm doubting him in 2020 to get hurt or anything, but at some point they've got to dial back the amount of usage. I mean, they lean on him more than any team leans on any other player. That's got to scare people. And everyone hates when you start talking about the future and a decline potentially for a player. And I'm not talking about that with McCaffrey in 2020, probably not even in 2021, but it wouldn't shock me if McCaffrey had a shorter career than people think at his frame, the type of abuse he's taken, and the overusage that he's received.
So let's keep going with running backs. Obviously, a hot guy this season seems to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Where are you at with his situation? Obviously, the Chiefs had some, running back issues this offseason. Draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire really early. Simple logic tells you that that's going to be the guy that they're going to use, and that's going to be the guy that they ground and pound with, right?
I mean, where am I at? Frustrated, because this has been something that I've been on from the beginning, and he's my number one bold prediction, has been for months. And one's crazy to call him a top 5 running back in his rookie year, and to call him a top 1 to 5 overall player in Dynasty, not so crazy anymore. And people are such short memories that everybody acts like that was not bold at the time. He's sitting on top of my top 10 at sleeperu.com, my top 10 bold predictions, and it was sizzling hot when that piece was written. So I'm a little frustrated, but I own so many shares of him so already that I'm fine. I'm fine. I just hope that all of my followers own shares of him too. because now you got to pay through the roof. But that doesn't mean he won't earn it. Look, the guy is the most elite talent to come out of college at the running back position in some time. And I know that a lot of people are going to say he's too small. He's a between the tackles runner. He's a 1,400 yard rushing running back. He's not a Christian or a Alvin Kamara where he's going to get 900 yards, not get run over 200 times. He was the workhorse at LSU. He was leaned on in the third and fourth quarter. He was fed more when the game was on the line. He was facing the toughest defenders in college football and making them look silly on a play-by-play basis. Like, this guy has micro movement ability, like shifting left and right and then knifing forward like nobody we've seen since Ray Rice. And the reason that's so important is at the NFL level, when you have a low center of gravity, you're built like a bowling ball, you can't get knocked over. With that micro movement ability like Ray Rice used to have, or Marshall Faulk, or whoever you want to compare him to. And I'm not afraid to compare him to those guys. I don't care what anybody says to me. You can't do that. I can do whatever I want on my show when I am on my show. I'm on your show now. So, but
no, you can't be my
show,
guest.
when I'm on my show predicting these things, people go, "You can't do that." Like, yes, I can. I can do whatever I want. And I'm telling you right now, just like predicting Adrian Peterson, which was not popular back in his rookie year, believe it or not, people were over half the people in fantasy football said he was going to be a complete bust, too upright, never going to last. I was calling him a top 5 running back before his rookie year, and he's getting drafted outside the top 20. Same thing here. Like, this guy is going to be, I would not be shocked. Let me put it this way. 2021 redraft leagues, I will not be shocked if he's the 1.1.
Wow. That's a bold prediction for sure. And one of his teammates now, Patrick Mahomes, is going to be at the front of a lot of drafters' minds going into this. I saw you put on your Instagram story that you did kind of for fun, ballsy Kansas City Chiefs league. Where are you at with a guy like Pat Mahomes, a guy like Lamar Jackson that are going to get drafted really soon? Do you jump on their talent, or do you sit back and wait a little bit and hope for a Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson player in the following rounds?
But they're not, that's the thing. And before I go on this tangent, let me say that I'm an advocate of late drafting QB approaches and early. Like, I love them all. I don't discriminate. I'm an equal opportunity quarterback drafter. And I literally found Patrick Mahomes was my number 1 bold prediction in 2018. And I wrote that in 2017 when he wasn't even the starter. And Alex Smith, if you remember, was on fire. And people are like, this is the future. And, everyone's like, wait a minute, it's Alex Smith, though. But he looked great. I wrote this bold prediction then for 2018. So I know a little bit about landing those quarterbacks late. So I love that game too. It's very, very important to play that game in a lot of leagues, depending on where your draft slot is. Like, if you're drafting at 2 point or 1.11, like, you're not going to take Mahomes or Lamar at the very top of the second round. That's when I deploy a Tom Brady approach, who I think is going to win a lot of leagues in 2020. I think Tom Brady's going to go insane, and people are going to look back going, this was pretty obvious. Why the hell did I not expect Tom Brady with Godwin, Evans, Gronk to drop 35 plus TDs in 2020? Get ready for that. But when you're drafting at 18 overall in the second round, 20 overall, and what you just said is perfectly set up for this. Like, people say, are you looking at him early? Are you looking at Lamar early? To me, that's not early. Like, quarterbacks used to go in the first round, and I get that the thinking is, oh, the player pool is so deep. Well, that's a different discussion. If you're saying that Mahomes is not head and shoulders above the quarterbacks you're getting later, then that's where the divide happens in our debate, and we could debate that. But when you think like I do, I could care less about what history tells us that quarterbacks aren't going to repeat. Well, I don't care about that stuff. What I care about is what I feel about that player heading into that season. Just like a coin toss, there's certain percentages, right? But what about when you're tossing that coin right now? All that matters is that moment, not how many coin tosses before landed heads. For me, Mahomes is 45 total TD capable. His floor is 41, 42, like if you include rushing and all that, and his ceiling is above 50. And I think 5,000 yards is not crazy for him to throw out again. 2018, He scored, I think, in one of my leagues, it was like 580 points. The next highest player was like 430 or something. He was so much ahead of everybody. And I think he's going to have that kind of year in 2020. So I'm drafting him all day long, right around 15 to 22 overall. And I won't let him fall past me anytime I see him. And Lamar, I feel the same way about in a lot of ways. I'm more like if I have to choose, I'm choosing Mahomes, but I still take Lamar before like 24. I don't let him fall past me.
So a guy that you talked about a little bit there is Tom. You said Tom Brady's going to win some leagues this year. I know people are going to be bullish on him too, especially like you said last year. People are going to be a little bit scared. He was kind of a QB2 for some people last year, but I feel like people aren't factoring in these weapons. Where do you fall? You know, what's your confidence in Tampa's offense? I should ask. Do you think Gronk could be the guy that he was in New England?
I think he could miss games, but yes, per start, he will do very well. If he doesn't have the yardage he used to, which he could because he's been healthy and rested, and I don't think he's been staying in shape. He looks really good on. I know we only have like social media videos to look at it and stuff, but with this off season, we don't have a whole lot to go off anyway for anybody. We don't have a lot of footage. We don't combine video. We don't have a lot. We have to. A lot of speculation is going to happen. A lot of injuries are going to happen. A lot of veterans are going to get hurt. So a guy like Gronk who gets hurt a lot, probably a safe assumption he misses games, but per start and I think touchdown wise, he's going to be amazing. And you're talking about a tight end pool that's very thin after you get past Waller or Andrews, Waller, Ertz, however you want to rank those three after the top two, Kittle and Kelsey. Then it's like a coin toss. It's like a blender. So if anybody has Gronk ranked 6 or 7 and people crap on that, I'm like, how do you? Who are your next 5 or 6 tight ends after number 5? Because I can rip those apart all day long too. They all have question marks. Tampa Bay, Winston is not that great of a quarterback. We know that by the interceptions, like we know that he's not a great decision maker. And Arians airs it out. And we know that Brady still has an arm. I hate when people say he's got a noodle arm or he can't throw look at the YouTube footage from last year. It's available to everybody for free. And it's sitting there for your viewing pleasure. And you can watch him throw 45-yard passes, 50-yard passes. Maybe he can't throw 65 anymore, but who cares when you have Mike Evans going up and grabbing any errant pass that Brady could throw if his accuracy is down, which I don't think it will be. It's going to be one of those writing on the wall things for Brady. Like, how the hell did if somebody doesn't take him seriously and later on they're looking at his huge monster season? How the hell did I not see this coming? He's got too many weapons to not score a ton of points, and he looks great right now throwing to Mike Evans. Mike Evans might be the guy everybody's sleeping on at 3.01 to 3.05.
So this show is based in Cleveland. Let's stay in the AFC North here. Which Cleveland Brown are you for sure drafting? And I know there's a Cleveland Brown that a lot of people think highly on that you're not so sure on, and Nick Chubb.
Okay, so this is funny too because I feel like it's very easy to assume that I don't like Nick Chubb, and a lot of people think that by my content. I think per start he's going to be a top 5 to 7 running back. So I love Nick Chubb. I love the situation. I love Stefanski. I think they're going to run the ball like they did in Minnesota, everything through the running game, dial back the passing attack, which is bad for Landry and Odell. Although I think Odell, out of all the receivers in the league, he's probably the one guy that can get the most from a little, get you a bunch of touchdowns, big plays. So I think Odell could survive. Landry, he looks like he's okay right now, running onto the field in practice. I've seen him. He's not showing any signs of that hip injury being an issue, but there was talk about him potentially not being ready for week 1.
Right.
So back to Chubb. So dialing back the pass, running a ton, Chubb's going to get fed a ton. And if he doesn't get hurt, I don't think Hunt will unseat him. I think at worst it'll be like a 60-40 type situation, which will be plenty for Chubb. He'll still be a top 8 to 10 running back in that situation. He'll be a top 5 to 7 if he's getting more than 60%. But the problem and concern is injury. The problem and concern is his aggressive running style, hence the red flags. Injury history from the past, one of the biggest gruesome knee injuries we've ever seen in college football. Heavy workload on top of those knees, aggressive running style just got a concussion. He's aggressive. He's the kind of guy that I think the odds, if you had to look at some of the injury algorithms out there, has to rank in the upper end of running backs for likelihood of getting hurt. And people get so mad over that data. Oh, you can't predict injury. You can't predict injury. But again, it comes down to red flags. If there are enough of them in that injury category, you can say to yourself, I might miss 7 times out of 10, but this player feels like a walking injury to me. Geis, are you going to, if someone put a gun to your head and said, Geis plays 8 games in 2021, you're going to say, hell no, or Will Fuller. If you had to bet $1,000 on Will Fuller playing 8 games or more, would you bet that?
No.
Like what end would you go? Like, you had to pick one side though.
I'm saying he's not going to play 8 games.
Yeah,
That's just who he's shown to be.
Right. There's so many. It's funny how people act like you can't predict injuries, but yet you put them on the spot. They're like, yeah, I wouldn't make that bet. I just feel like if Chubb goes down, the problem's going to be Kareem Hunt is as good between the tackles and he's better in the PPR game. Once they get a taste of what he can do for that offense, and if he's exciting, and if things are firing on all cylinders with Hunt in there, it's going to be really, really tough for them to dial back Hunt's role. And I think it could flip towards 60-40 Hunt Chubb. So that's why I'm worried about Chubb, and I stay away from him. And Hunt's value is like in the 4th round now, depending on who you're drafting with. He could be in the 6th or 7th round if you're drafting with a bunch of magazine drafters or novice fantasy football players. But if you're hardcore, you've been embedded in fantasy football, Hunt is in the 4th round now. And to draft Chubb in round 1, Hunt in 4 makes it really problematic to build a really balanced team. That said, you could go Jacobs in the 1st round, Hunt in the 4th. You're diversifying your risk a little bit because you're not putting everything on the Browns attack. And so I've done that. I've drafted Jacobs or another player and drafted Hunt, but I haven't been drafting Chubb and Hunt, and I'm kind of been fading Hunt or Chubb because of my belief that Hunt will win leagues for people in 2020. Tom Brady, Kareem Hunt, AJ Brown, I've been pumping up big time since January, getting called absolutely insane for all the predictions I've had on him, but he's been climbing so high. Now nobody thinks those predictions are bold because top 5 to 7 for AJ Brown's very conceivable at this moment. Even if you don't rank him there, the point is that he could score that amount of points and be that good. So, and then Clyde I've been talking up a ton too. So those are some guys that I think are going to win leagues for people in 2020.
Let me paint you a picture here because the last few years, man, I've been gouging out my eyes with this. In 2018, I had a draft that was super early, drafted Dan Bailey to be my kicker. We all know how that goes. He gets cut. I'm like, man, if that was not the most surefire kicker, he's gone. Last year, now I have a carousel of kickers, and I'm cutting them every week. I'm at the point where I'm losing points in my kicker position. And I know there's other people out there like me. Who is the most reliable kicker, and how can people prevent this from happening year again?
I would say take a kicker that's on a high scoring offense. And if something happens like that where they get cut, then grab the next guy that's up. But I think that, like in Tom Brady's case, you take Gay, the kicker for the Bucks, pair him with Brady, and you're pretty safe getting those field goal points and Tom Brady's extra, the extra points you're going to get from Tom Brady touchdowns. And historically high scoring offenses, the kickers do, fairly well. So I think that's a good plan of attack. And I usually do like to stack my kicker and my quarterback if possible, if it's a good offense, if it's a high volume, attack.
All right, cool. Let's wrap this up here. I'm not sure about other people, but I get a little bit frazzled during my draft every year. How do you prepare, and how can you advise people to stay calm when they're going through the myriad of players to make sure they pick the right ones and not make boneheaded decisions?
So simple, but so hard to deploy and stay on course. But, first of all, go piss off your girlfriend or significant other, and then practice a mock draft right by her screaming and yelling. That might help you. But I think ultimately, in all seriousness, best player available is what I preach over and over and over. And if you're on the clock and you're freaking out because players aren't falling the way that they're supposed to be falling, your plan of attack was to go running back wide receiver because you're worried about the wide receivers or whatever, and you're sitting there looking at a player that is clearly ahead of the other player, and you're going to go by position and need, you're making a mistake. You're going to take that player later on, go, I don't know if I should have done that. If you're taking the best player available, you almost never have that feeling where you say, I don't like that pick. I took Fournette. I hate Fournette. I took Fournette, because I needed a running back. If you took the player you loved, you can worry about that hole or the void that you're creating later. You got to look at it like a balance, a scale too. If you're taking the guy that's going to score the most points and you believe positionally you're not like looking at that wrong, like let's say you're not going to take Matt Ryan in the third round because he's going to score the most points. I'm not saying that. But if you're taking a quarterback like Mahomes over a running back like, or over even a wide receiver like, let's say, Hopkins, like it's not crazy because you believe in this player. You want to watch this player, which is so important. You want to watch the players that you have. Like, I think people should want to challenge with their holes in their lineup and enjoy their team more than have a team they don't love and feel balanced and then go watch football and be like, oh, I'm rooting for Fournette. I hate Fournette. Like, great. This will be fun. What a great year. Like, I'd rather root for Mahomes and Clyde and have weak wide receivers that everybody's making fun of, but they don't know that I love DK Metcalf. I love Chark. I love Hollywood Brown. And I believe my wide receivers that I assembled later and filled my holes differently are going to compete with somebody that drafted, guys that are bigger names. So draft the best player available at every turn. And I highly, highly doubt, other than being freaked out about having a hole at running back 2 or wide receiver 3 that you have to be creative and crafty enough to fill, you're going to love your team. And that's the most important thing.
All right, cool. So speaking of that preparation, plug your stuff one more time, Smitty. Thanks so much for the time. Where could people find you at?
You can find me at Sleeper U, the letter U, this one, sleeperletteru.com, like a university. HeySmitty.com is where you can order those phone calls. And then, of course, thefantasyfootballshow.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Smitty Smith from the Fantasy Football Show, as well as SleeperU.com. Great stuff from him. Huge shout out to him for taking a big chunk out of his day to talk some fantasy sports with me. That one was a whole lot of fun to do. I'm definitely prepped for Thursday's draft. So I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up, because obviously if you guys are watching this right now, it's either because the Indians are in a bit of a lull or the fact that the NBA playoffs aren't on. So we know that the NBA playoffs have been canceled for tonight, postponed to a later date. Hopefully they're hopeful that they continue to get these games in later, obviously in protest of the social injustice issues that have been happening over the last few days. And my only take on this is the NBA and the NBAPA and the NFL and the NFLPA and the MLB, as bad as I hate to say it, and the MLBPA, put in so much work in order to ensure safety and ensure everything was good to go with the coronavirus. And 2020 has been such a weird year because we're living in a global pandemic health crisis, but we're also living in the weirdest time, definitely in my life, in terms of social injustice and social justice issues. So with that, it feels to me like Sean Doolittle, who is a pitcher from the Washington Nationals, said it best to me. And his quote was, when all the stuff with the MLB was hitting the fan, he said, "Sports are a reward for a functional society." And I think that holds true. And I think it always has held true, dating back to the origin of sport back in, ancient Egypt, when they were seeing who could throw rocks the furthest. That was a reward for getting work done and for having an operating and functional society. And right now, our athletes' platforms have never been bigger. And I don't think there's anybody arguing about the size of the platforms of these athletes. And recently in 2020, they've decided to really take it to the next level and prove that they can create their own change in the world. And they're doing that. So to me, and to anyone, I don't think 2020 is a functioning society. I don't. Between the social injustice, and then we had the riots and the looting and the coronavirus on top of that, and the second surge that followed, right now, the NBA, in my opinion, did the right thing. Take the night off. You're in this high stress bubble environment anyways, where you can't leave. You can't be with your loved ones after, a crisis like this just happened for the Milwaukee Bucks in the city that they lived in. They had to watch a man that lives in their city be shot in the back, 7 times. All right, you deserve the night off. You had to wake up to that news on social media, and you can't even be there to hug your loved ones because you're locked up inside of this bubble. That takes a toll on a person, and the bubble itself takes a toll on the person. And I like that Woj reported just before this show went on air that there is hope within the Milwaukee Bucks organization, within the NBA Board of Governors currently, right before the show went on air, that a season can continue, and that tonight was needed to send a bigger message that life is bigger than sports. And I'm gonna keep going back to the Sean Doolittle quote, my picture from the Washington Nationals. Sports are a reward for a functioning society. And with everything going on right now, and there's a myriad of things, I mentioned the coronavirus, I mentioned the social injustice, there's 100 other things that you could add into that pot and mix in there, that right now society is not functioning the way that it should, the way that's best for all of us to live our lives freely. Like, isn't it weird that we have to go to the grocery store in masks now? Like, that's not how life is supposed to be. That's not, George Washington, say what you want about him, didn't, become the first president and say, yeah, life is supposed to be worn in masks. Like, we're living in weird times right now. And it was best what the NBA did tonight. And people that are saying, like, nobody cares about the NBA, they could take the night off and nobody cares about them. If you're saying that, you probably care about the NBA, and you're probably a little bit mad that they did that. And we could all be upset. We all like sports. It's our escape from reality. But take the night off. Listen to my show. Go on a walk with your loved ones. Put a movie on. Play a board. When's the last time a family watching my show has played a board game? Tweet the show at Padone My Take. Tweet the show at Nick Padone 12. It's probably been a while. I think we're going to be okay. I think sports are going to be back. We have Cleveland Browns football in 18 days. You have the Cleveland Indians on right now. It's going to be okay. They needed the night off. This bubble is a high-stress situation. They worked so hard for it. I really, truthfully can't foresee as big of a stand as they're taking right now. And it's unprecedented. This has not happened in sports since, the USA and the USSR Olympics. Like, this has not happened in a very long time. But they worked so hard in the midst of a global pandemic to play sport for our enjoyment and to reign a champion in the NBA. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to come back. Speaking of panic, sports leaving us, is it time to panic about our Cleveland Browns? I say no. At the top of the hour, we talked about the injuries. The offense is going to need to score a lot of points. You're obviously without Grant Delpit. But guys, this is why you hired an offensive-minded coach. And you're taking a risk on a first-year guy that has limited play-calling experience as an offensive coordinator, and he's going to be thrown into now managing an entire roster of 53 players that he's going to be out there all by himself coaching these guys. We saw it last year with Freddie Kitchens. And there's a lot of things stacked against Kevin Stefanski. And I want to talk about some of those things. First being the global pandemic that we just talked about. And the second being the social justice issues that are sweeping the NFL locker rooms just as much. We saw the reply from the NFL, players applauding the Milwaukee Bucks and the NBA for taking a back seat today. There was bigger and more important things to think about. Don't you think the Cleveland Browns are thinking about, the same thing and how they can help? And Stefanski's the leader in all that. He needs to be the voice, the comfort in all of that. He is their football father in a sense. And I know that's a term that's used loosely, but a football coach, that's a leader of men. When Jimmy Haslam hired Kevin Stefanski, he looked at him and said, you are going to lead the Cleveland Browns. On the field, off the field, in Zoom meetings. Odell Beckham Jr. said he's been texting Stefanski, you need to lead the Cleveland Browns. So you have that. You have no OTAs to implement your new offense. You have no preseason to determine whether you're going to call the plays or whether new offensive coordinator Van Pelt is going to call the plays. So you have that stacking against you with your key player injuries. Grant Delpit going down doesn't help at all. He was going to be in the rotation. Mac Wilson, who's your starting interior linebacker, supposedly the heir to the throne of Joe Schobert, can now no longer play either due to a hyperextended knee. Your guys are injured. Your starting center and NFL, PA president JC Treader has been out since the beginning of camp. I feel like this doesn't get talked about nearly enough. He's having surgery to scope out stuff in his knee. There's a lot building against this guy. There's false COVID-19 tests, including his own. This is all stuff Kevin Stefanski has to do, and he has pressure of dealing with 2 all-world wide receivers, feeding Odell, feeding Jarvis, making sure those 2 high-personality characters are happy and fed. And you also have a guy that should have been the rushing champion last year in Nick Chubb to pair with Baker Mayfield, the number 10 overall pick in this draft, which is an offensive player, and Jedrick Wills to protect him. Whoo, that's a lot of pressure if you're Kevin Stefanski, but I'm not in panic mode yet because the guy has taken the horse by the reins and he's weathered the storm. And that's all you can ask. All you can evaluate the guy off of is what he's done thus far. And what he's done thus far is make sure things are okay. The Browns are going to be in an okay place because I think they finally have the right guy. And I said that last year with Freddie Kitchens. And we were all so stupid and so naive because he didn't even have experience as a play call. He was a journeyman assistant running back coach and quarterback coach and tight end coach. Who was Freddie Kitchens? He was spoken highly of from the players that he was buddies with, from Ryan Lindley, who was the quarterback's coach, even though he was 2 years removed from playing in the league, to Kevin Stefanski, who has had a stable job in the National Football League for 14 years, is one of the longest tenured assistant in the league and the longest tenured assistant in the Minnesota Vikings organization, coached under Brad Childress, coached under Mike Zimmer. I think this time around is going to be different because we have a guy with a brain. We have a guy that shows a little bit of a maturity and a little bit of leadership when it's needed most. When the last 2 Cleveland Browns coaches were just cartoon characters. You had Hugh Jackson, who was so quick to just throw everybody and anybody under the bus. And you had Freddie Whoop-de-Hell Kitchens that half the time, his sideline was a mess. We were in week 10 and there were still too many players on the field. I feel like just that in itself, organization skills, I feel like when you enroll in an Ivy League school, which Kevin Stefanski graduated from, at minimum you have good organizational skills, and that's going to be important. And I think organizational skills in and of itself can get 2 more wins this season because that's something that they greatly lacked last year. So this show is ticking, man. It's already, we're winding down. I'm not in panic mode about the Browns yet. One more thing I wanted to touch on quickly was the defense will be okay, and the offense will also be okay. People are panicking right now so hard about our offense. Well, Baker looks like garbage. I hear the analysts on Twitter. I see the tweets too, and they're like, well, in order to complete a pass in the game, you got to complete one in practice. And it's like, press the panic button on Baker now too, and the offense stinks, and he's overshooting Odell and Jarvis, and there's constantly players in the backfield, and it's all so panicked right now. But we need to take a breath and realize that this is practice that we're getting worked up about. In any sport, well, I don't know about any sport, man. I've never played hockey, barely played soccer. The defense knows what's coming, whether it's basketball, football. The defense knows that Baker's going to be throwing some variant of a slant or some variant of a vertical to Beckham or to Landry. They have a clue of the system and how things are going to go at any given time. So that's why the defense looks good right now. That's why the offense is anemic. That's happening across the National Football League this year. The defense knows what's coming. There's no reason to panic about that either. So let's get into our play of the week, which is always presented by our hosts of the show at BigPlay.com. Big Play is your number 1 source for live interactive sports shows just like this one every night of the week. Give them a follow at BigPlay_com. They got Peyton Hillis on there in the backfield with Keith Migra, some awesome guests, interviews, and a whole lot of fun on that show. And then you have the good old Big Play Reflog show with Chris McNeil, Big Play Dave. They've had Gab Cruz from the Indians on the last few days. They've been doing some great stuff as well. Make sure to give them a follow at bigplay_com. So how this works is our play of the week. If you missed it last week, we're going to talk about a small play of the week, a medium play of the week, and a large play of the week. So a team that's the small play, or a player, anyone, sports figure that missed the mark, that was in the middle, and that completely hit the mark. You'll catch my drift as we go on here. So my small play of the week goes to LeVar Ball, because earlier today, LeVar Ball lost his own son to the company that they started together. And everyone knows the story. Big Baller Brand, supposed to be the next hot thing in sports, and every athlete in their mind is going to be wearing Big Baller Brand, and that didn't really shake out. We know that there was a bunch of legal stuff that took place with an assistant that was an agent and kind of not an agent, this, that, and the other. So there definitely was some trouble there with Big Baller Brand, but this is super awkward because Big Baller Brand and LaMelo Ball's signature shoe was the reason that he was NCAA ineligible. That was the reason why LaMelo Ball had to go overseas to play college basketball, because he was receiving money from his signature shoe that his dad started. So now it's super awkward that he's leaving the company that made him NCAA ineligible. Like, if that's not the most awkward thing ever. And then imagine being the guy that makes their own knockoff Payless shoe for your son, and then your son can't even reap the benefits of being one of the best players in college athletics. Like, imagine how cool it would be to be on campus with LaMelo Ball. He'd be taking pictures with people. You can't sign autographs, but, hanging out. Everybody knows who you are. You're a small celebrity in a bubble-like setting on campus. It'd be really cool. So now he doesn't even want to be a part of the company that robbed you like that. Doesn't really matter. In my opinion, Big Baller Brand as a shoe company, as an athletic wear company, is kind of a fire fest at this point anyways, it seems. I checked their website today just for laughs, and they're selling shoes for LiAngelo Ball, who is the middle boy that really hasn't done anything in the NBA. He's bounced around a few G League teams if I recall, but man, hasn't really done anything. So he has his own signature shoe on there now that they're trying to sell, and they're still pushing the $50 t-shirts. And I did have a Big Baller Brand t-shirt at one time, and it was really nice. It was high quality. I got what I paid for, but it's just weird. It doesn't appeal to women at all. Like, the whole thing is just firefest from a marketing standpoint. And now his son, who he started the company for, has nothing to do with it because he signs a huge shoe deal with Puma today. So LeVar Ball, you're my small play of the week, man. You completely missed the mark this week. Now we have my medium play of the week, a guy that's teetering right between the small play and the big play, and that's NFLPA President J.C. Tretter, who did an awesome job this offseason getting us football back and handling all these offseason, negotiations that had to happen between the owners and the players. JC predicted that all these injuries were going to happen this season. And I'm sure he's probably not patting himself on the back like, I told you so. Hell, I'm injured. My knee's getting scoped. My Grant Delpit rookie had his Achilles blown. Xavier McKinney from the New York Giants today busted his foot. Like, he predicted that there was going to be injuries, and he said that all throughout. And now there's injuries, and not a whole lot of answers because there was no organized team activities. There's going to be no preseason. I'm interested to see how that impacts the NFL, and even further, how that impacts fantasy football. A discussion that we had earlier with Smitty Smith. If you're listening live and you missed that, you can catch this show tonight or tomorrow morning on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. Just search Padone My Take. I have an interesting idea, and there's obviously 32 NFL teams, and we all know that, in all the different cities, and I'm sure there's other cities that are deserving of them. What if we made a fully remote 33rd NFL franchise? I don't know what you would call it. Would you call it the pool team, the COVID team, just the injury team? And it's a bunch of guys, and you could take guys from the XFL. You can take guys from, college that were just undrafted free agents that are still worth looking at. Guys that maybe burned out in the actual NFL that are worthy of a second chance. I'm maybe looking at you, Braxton Miller, Cardell Jones, some of the local guys that fit into that equation, and have a team of 53 guys that don't play at all, but are ready, that want to be in the NBA, that want to be in the NFL, and they're on standby. They're ready to go. So say the Browns have a really bad injury, or God forbid somebody tests positive for the coronavirus for real this time. Andrew Berry could have somebody from this 53 team on speed dial, COVID test ready to go, get them on an airplane and get them to Cleveland, get them to Berea so they're ready to go for the game. I know that's super far-fetched and the logistics of it are far from perfect, especially with how diligent these teams are being with the safety protocols, with the testing, with the social distancing, with the quarantining. It'd be hard to do, but I think it's a really cool idea because now you have the coronavirus, which is very serious, and we don't want to infect an entire league and have the whole league fold under, and I think they've made that very clear that they don't want that to happen. But now you also have to worry about the non-contact injuries and the things that happen with that as well. So I think it would be cool if there's kind of just a standby of players that are healthy, that are ready to go, worked out maybe even by the league and observed digitally over Zoom or something you could even do. So that these players are in game shape and that they're ready to go. They're just looking for a shot and they don't fit on a 53-man roster. Obviously, it's what the practice squad's for. You have an expanded practice squad this season. But, man, worst comes to worst, man, you might need something more than just a practice squad this season. That's my fear, and I feel like that's a fear of a lot of people. And finally, my big play of the week is former Cleveland Cavaliers head coach Tyronn Lue. He is going to have his pickings of NBA jobs when this NBA season finally does come to a close and when teams start to interview candidates for that. You have the Nets. You could, coach your old guy Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. You have the 76ers. You could be part of the process with Embiid, Simmons, be a pivotal point in that franchise and their hopeful turnaround. The New Orleans Pelicans. Do we even need to talk about Zion Williamson and the perks that come with that? The Indiana Pacers, even though they got swept, they're a bright team on the rise, in my opinion. You have valuable assets in Victor Oladipo, Miles Turner, Dante Sabonis, if you want to turn around and trade him in a possible Pacers-type deal to take the next step in the Eastern Conference. Ty Lue, man, this one's to you because you're my big play of the week, and you're going to have some pickings this offseason when it comes to your next coaching job. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of people in this city where this show is hosted right here in the Big Play studio that are kind of regretful and remorseful, like, hey, man, maybe we shouldn't have fired Ty Lue like 3 games into the season in the middle of a rebuild. Maybe this guy was the coach that needed to be the coach of this team. I think Ty Lue's going to be just all right for himself. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us. This has been a fantastic hour. Another huge shout-out to Smitty Smith from the Fantasy Football Show from SleeperU.com. He's a CBS fantasy sports analyst. If you missed that interview, make sure to check it out on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. Just give it a search, Padone My Take. Also, this show was presented by Dugout Mugs, my new friends over at Dugout Mugs. I'm in the dugout, as you can see. I got my Cleveland Indians dugout mug right here engraved just for me. They want you to get involved. They want you in the dugout too to get yourself going. They're giving my listeners a free limited time thing. You're going to get a free knob shot. Check this little guy out. It's the knob of a baseball bat hollowed out on the inside and engraved with the Cleveland Indians Block C logo right on there. Check these guys out for sure. Dugoutmugs.com/Padone. They're going to get you one of these little free shot glasses, free of charge. You just got to pay the shipping and handling to get it to your door. They're selling these guys for about $24 in the Tribe Team Shop. You're going to get yours for about 8 because you have to pay for the shipping to get it to your door. Use my link below, dugoutmugs.com/Padone. Super cool offer, super limited. And hey, these things could be worth a little bit of money at some point if the tribe goes ahead and changes their name. So next Wednesday, be on the lookout. Same bat time, same bat channel. I'll be right back here. As always, this has been another episode of Padone My Take, presented by my friends at bigplay.com and dugoutmugs.com. Make sure to get your free shot glass at dugoutmugs.com/my last name, Padone. Thanks everybody so much for watching. Peace out. Love you so much.